level of intrigue, essentially. And if he could do anything else other than technical writing, he'd be a part-time travel agent, part-time park ranger.
Cool.
Now, I did ask a lot of people what they felt about letters and punctuation and whatnot, and I will read, in fact, this and some of the following ones verbosely, but this one. Least favourite piece of punctuation is the double dot at the end of a sentence. So he sees it all the time in text and emails. Now, he's not a stickler for grammar, but how is he supposed to interpret this undocumented dot dot? Is it a period? Is it an ellipsis? Is it both? What does it mean? He thinks he's settled on viewing it as a kind of half period, half ellipsis. Does the writer feel a period is too concrete, but ellipsis too vague? They don't really want to commit to either, so they split the difference. No idea if this interpretation is correct, so he would love to hear your opinions. Right. And without further ado, leaving you thinking about double dot, what does it mean? I hand you over to Alex.
Thanks everyone. Again, name is Alex, work at Google. Super excited to be here. First time Australia, first time presenting at Write the Docs. It's going to be great. Today I'm going to be talking about rethinking release notes. How do I go? Oh, I click the next slide button. There we go. Okay, so quick agenda. This is not a mysterious presentation. You'll get the agenda up front. We've got what's a release note, examples of release notes, how Google Cloud has struggled with release notes immensely, and how we're trying to do better. So let's kick things off with what's a release note. And whenever I don't know what something is, I usually like to ask Wikipedia, because they're always right. And Wikipedia says that release notes are documents distributed with software products, sometimes when the product is still in the development or test state. Now, I think that this is just documentation, not just specifically release notes. So let's have another attempt. I'd say release notes are more like documents distributed with software products that explains what's new or changed. And this is the key point of a release note, right? It's not just something that you ship along with your product. It's not just a manual. It has a specific purpose, and that's to say, why do I care about this update? What's different from the previous one? Why should I pay you money for this new thing? Why should I waste bandwidth, as expensive as it is, to download your update? Why do I care about this thing? And in order to answer that question, I want to start off by looking at some examples of release notes sort of in the wild. The first one we'll look at is like a super traditional release note. This is Microsoft 8, Windows 8.1, a relic of the past. This release note is actually really good. It summarizes all the bugs that they fixed with Windows 8.1, and there were a lot of them. This is just like 2% of the page. They're saying like everything we did, that we did wrong with Windows 8, we're doing it better with Windows 8.1. And this other release note can be really dry, but it's actually super, super important. You think there's system administrators out there who installed Windows 8 and they regret that decision immensely. And they want the last thing they want to do is piss off their users again by rolling out some update that has even more problems with it, right? So you know that they're going to go out and they're going to read this release notes in detail to see hey, all these things that my users were complaining about, they're fixed now. Right? And it is especially true, if you have a big enterprise fleet or something like that, an update isn't something you take lightly. It's expensive, and it's something that's costly can, break everyone in your entire company. So, given that risk, release notes like this for large software is really important. Here's an example of how even the smallest change can have super wide-reaching consequences. I'll read from this XKCD slide. There's a guy who, there's a bug where holding down spacebar increases the temperature of his machine, and so he decides, the control key is too hard to read, so I configured Emacs to interpret holding the spacebar and the rise in temperature as the control key, and now that you fixed this, my workflow is broken. Yeah, it's terrible. Now, obviously this is a fake example, but you'd be surprised how not that far off this sort of thing is. We're gonna get a show of hands. Who's heard of the video game Simcity? Yeah, tons of people. All right, so Simcity, if you haven't, it's a really popular city simulation game, came out in the late 1980s. And back when this game was coded, there was a feature in Windows, more like a hack, where you could read from memory even after it was marked as release in order to improve performance beyond what the system would normally allow. Now, even if you don't know anything about memory management, you can probably tell like that's not a good thing. You shouldn't be doing that. And Simcity abused this feature, and eventually the Windows team got around to fixing that bug, and it completely broke Simcity for all the people who had it installed. And this is back in the day when the engineers of Windows were super concerned about backwards compatibility, and so they actually went out and they wrote a specific hack in Windows just to support SimCity that allowed them to use this and nobody else. When I worked at Microsoft, like the first thing I did on my second day was go search for this hack in the source code, and it is there. Point of this story is even the most minor changes, undocumented ones that are clearly hacks, like developers out there are going to abuse them and take advantage. So you need detailed release notes anytime you change anything so people know to, update their software. Speaking of video games, let's talk about another kind of release notes. Like in particular, competitive games are always releasing balance updates. They're changing the way like their weapons or characters work in order to promote competitive gameplay. And I guarantee you these gamers all read release notes the second they come out, right? They're not gonna like jump into the game and just start shooting and be like, wait, what is my gun? Like 5 times less powerful, right? They're up on it. And if you're an author on one of these products, how do you communicate these sorts of changes can make a huge difference. Good communication, explaining a balance change really well is the difference between like happy users who are, they love this game and like an army of angry teenagers on Twitter being like, developers are so stupid, I can't believe you made this change, why would you do that, blah, blah, blah. So again, this is another form of release notes that you can have a really big impact on a product by writing well. Another video game example, I love video games if you can't tell, is The Sims 3 and expansion packs. Lots of games have expansion packs. Let's say we have The Sims 3 Pets Edition, costs $20. It's a lot of money, and why should I spend my money on this game? If it's $20 and it's just a dog, maybe I don't want to, but maybe I have a little daughter and she loves dinosaurs, and so this update in this expansion pack includes dinosaurs. I'm willing to shell out the $20. This is an example where detailed release notes of what's the difference between what's new in this expansion pack, what's the difference between the previous one, can help make a sale or not, and users are going to care about. Last example I'll give is apps, and apps are great because they are the shining example of both horrible and really good release notes. So many apps, the app stores, for example Apple or Google Play or whatever, force them to write release notes, so they have to do it. And a lot of them are on really rapid Uber release schedules, so they take shortcuts. They'll say something like this on the screen. Just, we're always updating our app to make it better. Make sure you download the newest one so you have the newest thing. But they don't tell you what is actually new, right? Why should I care about downloading this? If the newest thing is just you change the shade of your cancel button from vermilion to crimson, I don't really care about that, right? It's not actually better. But if you fix the major security issue, then I care. Speaking of fixing issues, this is another common cop-out that apps use, right? Just we've got bug fixes. I always laugh when I see this because I should hope that every update is an improvement, right? As opposed to a regression. We've taken away the features. So this is again where writing really good release notes, it's hard to do and it's easy to cop out, but you don't want to do it. And here's why you don't want to do it. Let's look at some stats. This is broadband penetration worldwide. So there's two kinds of broadband. There is the wired kind, that's the fast stuff, probably most of us have it. Only 8% of the population in developing countries and 30% in developing ones have this kind of broadband. Meanwhile, 40% of users in developing countries and 90% of users in developed ones have mobile broadband. That's the stuff on your cell phone, where if you go 1 megabyte over your data cap, they're going to start charging you money, right? And so many users don't have access to just unlimited free Wi-Fi where they can auto-download in the middle of the night any update they want. A data update is going to cost them money, or at the very least, it's going to cost them a trip down to the Wi-Fi cafe so they can download their updates. And for users, especially those who are less well off, and especially given the size of some of these apps, right? Like mobile games can be many, many gigabytes in size. Good release notes that tell them, hey, you need this update if you want to keep playing your game, versus like this update just changes the color of a button or like how rounded the squares are, is the difference on whether they're going to download that update or make a trip to the cafe or not, right? And so that's how, again, good release notes that actually articulate the changes and don't just say bug fixes and improvements can be really, really helpful. Now, it is possible to swing the pendulum too far in the other direction. Here's the app, Reddit. I love Reddit, but the release notes list literally everything they fix with every single release. This isn't even half of their release notes from one release. One of the things they have is, it wasn't clear what the maximum number of emojis you could use on your profile, so we made it more clear. And that's nice, right? But I don't know if there's anyone who was up at night thinking, like, I wasn't sure if I could do 45 or 50 poop emojis on my profile, but I'm glad I know now, right? So the takeaway is, there's a balance, right? You want to communicate the information that your users are going to need to value, but communicating everything literally ever, people are probably just not going to read it. So to summarize, release notes matter, and you want to be brief and include as much information as possible. And if that seems like a hard task to accomplish, that's because it is. And that is why we get paid, in order to go and distill complex information into a short digestible amounts without it losing its meaning. So writing the release notes, hard but important. Okay, so now we talked about some general principles. It's time to tell you a story about release notes in Google Cloud. It's very spooky. If you are underage, please leave. You might be scared. So Google, great. I love working at Google. We're good at a lot of things. We've got search, we've got Gmail, release notes, not something we're good at. And I'm going to talk about some of the mistakes we've made and how we're trying to fix them. So for a bit of context, the Google Cloud documentation team has grown a lot recently. So before I joined a few years ago, there was just a couple dozen writers. They were really overworked. Now we have over 100 in different places across the globe, including here in Australia, London, United States, etc. And if you've been in the industry a while, you already know where this story is going. It's like a super old tale. A tale old as time. A small overworked team, too many things to do. They don't have a lot of time for process. They just sort of get it out, and then later it bites them in the ass. So let's take it first, just a quick look at what an average page of Google Cloud release notes look like. Here we go. It's pretty nice. We've got things organized by date, cool headers. We've got the cool little colored symbols that tell you what kind of fix it is. Is it a feature? Is it a bug fix? Is it a change? Whatnot? We kept the release note short. There's some context links if you want more information. Actually looks pretty good, right? But this is how all horror stories start, right? Like you have this white picket fence, everything's in order, but you don't know what's lurking beneath. And I'm gonna show you what's lurking beneath, and it's no good. So the first mistake that we've made is, our first monster, it's too much goop. I don't know if this is like a global slang word or just American. Like a more elegant way to say this might be there's too much infrastructure or too much boilerplate. But I love the word goop because it just sounds sloppy and messy and it's just like ugh. And that's exactly the problem we have. So quick jump scare, it's code on a slide. This is what the first 20 lines of source code for a Google Cloud release note look like. And if you can't read the text, don't worry, I'm going to walk you through each line. So first, we have a line that says extends another article. I didn't know I was writing a Java class, but okay. Next line, we have do not modify this in all caps. And anytime you see this, you know that somebody modified it at one point. Everything. So we've got that. Next we have a bunch of goop about translation. Translation is great, localization great. I don't know what it does. I don't know what these things mean. I'm just just gonna not touch it. That's been my motto since I got to this country, just don't touch it in case it kills me. It's worked out pretty well thus far. Next, we have a variable called custom heading, because we're apparently writing code here instead of text. And, oh, it's empty. So I don't know if I have a custom heading or not. It's unclear. I'll just not touch that either, seems safest. Next, we are including for files. If you're coming from like .NET or whatnot, that's like a using statement or an import or whatever. So basically, we're vacuuming in 4 files that I don't know what's in them. That's fine, cool, who knows, it could be anything. And then finally, we have a title release notes. Yes, we made it. We haven't started anything, right? And there's all this goop that just is really, really confusing. It's just like, what a disaster. Or this is just supposed to be a simple list of changes to a product. And the problem this creates is it makes it really, really hard for people who aren't part of our team to contribute, right? You know, our content, a lot of the content on Google Cloud isn't open source, but even if it was, people wouldn't be able to figure out. People within Google can't even figure it out. It's really, really difficult to contribute, and that's not a good thing. That's not something we should be striving for. But that's not the only reason goop is bad. I'll get to that in a second. But first I want to talk about mistake number 2, which is inconsistency. Here's 2 dates. Now, we know Americans love to do things differently. So, the first date in America, that's August 3rd, not March 8th. But that's why when you write code, you use a standardized format that everyone agrees on, right? Like ISO 8601, where no one's gonna get it wrong. We all agree on the standard. And that makes a ton of sense, and it makes writing code a lot easier. Of course, in Google Cloud Release Notes, we did not do that. We got this invention of our own. It's a month spelled as a complete word, immediately followed by the day, then no delimiter, and no zeros to give it a consistent number of digits. It's just the date with the day of and the year. And that's just disgusting, right? It's just not good. It's really ugly. But being ugly isn't automatically bad, right? Like maybe it's ugly, but it works. But remember, this is a horror story, so the way things work is like there's a bunch of innocent mistakes the characters make at first, and then later it gets them. So let's talk about that third mistake, which is neglecting RSS. Yeah, not good. So typically, if you're not familiar with RSS, documentation is served using a pull model. And that means when a customer has a problem, they go out, they look for the article that solves their problem using search or whatever, and then they go read it. Now, release notes are a slightly different beast because like we were talking about before, even the smallest changes can have a big impact on your system, right? So if Google Cloud decides they're gonna push out some update that changes the way you call a method and then you don't update your software, you're gonna have a very, very bad time, right? If Google Cloud pushes out a security fix that patches a huge vulnerability, you want to get that right now so that your software stays as up-to-date and secure as possible, right? And it could be really important for customers thus to act immediately. And that's why having RSS feeds for release notes is really, really important. So they can get a push model where they're notified instead of having to go out and hunt down that information. Now, here's just a quick example of what a feed might look like under the covers. It's a bunch of really structured XML in a very, very specific way. And the reason for doing this is that it enables feed readers or different tools that people can use to receive these feeds and get notifications. One of the most popular tools is Slack. We did a survey and the vast majority of our customers are using Slack. It makes sense, using it as your chat tool. The friendly Google bot comes along whenever there's a change, pops it right in as like a chat message and just says, hey, look at this update. You get your notifications along with everything else, which is nice. And here's an example of Slack in action. It's just a bunch of list of updates that come directly in their client. So here's the problem, if you haven't sort of been able to deduce this together as we've gone along. So feeds are consistent and structured, but our data is not consistent and it is not structured. And we want contributions, but our content is really hard to read. So think back to our date on the previous slide. How am I supposed to parse that and turn that into a structured date time? That's really hard to do. right? That's not easy, and that's why, this is a secret for this room only, for the longest time we curated our feeds by hand. It's pretty embarrassing. And then when we were like, you know what, we don't want to do that anymore, what did we do? We had a writer, he cooked up this tool, sort of hacked it together. It worked most of the time, it kind of auto-generated your thing. If it didn't work, you pinged him, he was on vacation, you just didn't have an RSS feed until he got back. So it was just not a good solution, right? And again, the other problem is we want our PMs and devs to start making contributions, but because the stuff is so unstructured, it's so inconsistent, people just don't know even where to start. So what do they end up doing? They end up just sending you an email or a bug and saying, hey, update the release notes. And we're just shooting ourselves in the foot. It's not something we want to do. There's all kinds of other problems with this too. And it's the sort of thing where it's not immediately obvious until you started using your product in production. So here's an example of Google Cloud's release notes compared to Amazon Web Services. See, AWS, they have a nice logo, a short summary of the changes in bold, some links where you can learn more. It's really nice. And GCP, we have a date and the text compute engine for every single one. It's just not good, right? It's a toddler who, they yell like, Mom, hey Mom, look at me. And you're like, oh, what? And they're like, I can't wait. And so you go all the way downstairs and they're like, are dinosaurs real? And you're like, Bobby, this could have waited until later. And that's how compute engine release note feeds are, right? It's like, you don't know whether it's a security fix or alpha availability in Antarctica until you click on it. So, how are we trying to fix this problem? The answer is we built a custom WYSIWYG editor on top of our release notes. And yeah, there's a nice pause, right? You're it's like just shoving your dirty laundry under the bed when your mom tells you to clean your room. Why would you do that? But it actually has worked out really well for us, and it makes a ton of sense. So what it does is it forces us to use a structured format for this specific type of content. So it forces us to have a very specific date format, forces us to select a particular type of release note that we're publishing, and forces us to have titles, stuff like that. And that enables all sorts of features, right? Like easily generating RSS feeds that are super, super consistent. It also makes it easier for PMs and devs to contribute to our release notes without needing to learn the entire system that sits underneath. It's really, really hard to learn. It also enables us to build other sorts of experiences for customers that can be really cool, like dynamically generated pages with JavaScript or whatever that let them filter by various products, or sort by date, or sort by priority, or sort by the type of change. As soon as your data is in a very, very structured format, it's easy to sort of do that sort of thing that you can't easily do when it's markdown or worse, which is what we have. So we aren't moving all of our authoring towards this system, just release notes. And I think the takeaway that I sort of had from this is that it's okay if different types of documentation have different layouts, right? It's okay if maybe your reference is structured XML, your markdown, your conceptual and how-to topics and overviews are in markdown, so they're very easy to write for people to contribute to. And then maybe your release notes use this weird custom WYSIWYG editor that uses highly structured data. At least I hope that's okay, because that's the direction we're moving in at Google, so hopefully it works out for us. Thanks so much for listening to the talk, really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the conference.